Hey everybody, how you doing? Happy to have you back to the PPC Mastery Education course at High Traffic Academy. We've gone over some preliminary information in the previous videos, and today we're going to get into taking some action. We're going to set up your first campaign in Google AdWords. The only assumption I'm going to make in this video is that you've set up your account in Google AdWords, and in order to do that you'll have to have a Gmail account, and then you go to adwords.google.com and you'll set up your account. And once you have set up your account, you will be you'll be in the dashboard of Google AdWords, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you guys so you can see what that dashboard looks like. So in an account, a Google AdWords account without any campaigns or ad groups set up, this is the home section that you'll land on, and you'll always want to make sure you're in campaigns right here. When you're in campaigns, this is what your dashboard will always look like. And here you'll see we have no active campaigns, and that's because we have not created any yet, and we're going to do that together here today. By the time we're done here today, my hope is that you'll be able to come in and set up campaigns without any trouble whatsoever. So here you have campaigns, ad groups, and you'll have all of your settings, which we'll go over all of this stuff in later courses. Today we're just concerned with getting an initial campaign set up so that we can then build out ad groups and go over keyword research and writing ad copy and all of the fun stuff. So here's the product that I've set up, just a sample WordPress site that has no content, no e-commerce functionality, nothing at all. It's just going to be a picture of different sets of shoes so that you can get a look at what it's like to actually set up a campaign. WordPress.com/men's vintage boots. So in this course we're going to set up 4 campaigns, and we're going to pretend as if we are interested in marketing shoes. So here what you have is literally just a blank page, and it's got a picture of these boots. And this is the product that we want to market. So let's assume that this is your website and you're selling shoes, and these are the shoes that we want to build out our first campaign around. We really like these boots. We think that they have good earning potential, and we want to start marketing them in Google AdWords. So here's our URL for that. We'll come back to that later. We're going to go back into Google AdWords, and you're going to click here. And this is very important because you need to make sure that you opt in to the correct network. You do not want to opt into the search network with display select. You do not want to opt into the display network only. And as of right now, we are not interested in opting into the shopping network. We want to ensure that we have search network only selected. Here we're going to title our campaign. And because these are not name brand boots, we are just going to call this men's vintage boots. Make sure you're opted into search network only here, and you want to select all features. And actually that's going to make me rename my campaign, but select all features once you're in search network only. I'll go back and retitle this. Okay. I always opt in to include the search partners. What that means is any search network that, for instance, ask.com or any search network that runs search results, you'll be opted into as well, and that is okay. I always opt into those. You can choose not to if you would like, but my recommendation is to opt into those so that you get the maximum amount of traffic in search results. Here is very important as well. For the sake of this operation, we're assuming that I only do business in the United States. So I will select United States and no other countries or territories. Make sure your language is selected to English because I'm selected into the United States. However, if you were targeting another country, then you can add another language there as well. In the basic setup of a campaign, we'll get into a lot of the more advanced bidding strategies and a lot of the more advanced campaign setup in later courses. However, for our purposes today, we're just going to manually set our bids for clicks. And here you'll want to set a default bid. This is the maximum amount that you're willing to pay for a click on this product. So I'm going to put $3.50. That's high, but in the shoe space, it's a competitive niche, so you'll pay more per click. But for this, we'll start with $3.50. And this is also very important. This is your budget, and they have it selected per day. They have you input it as if you're telling them how much you're willing to spend per day. What you need to be mindful of, though, is what your actual monthly budget is, because this will add up. For instance, $100 per day does not seem like very much, but if you set that budget at $100 per day and you walk away from your campaign and you come back a month later, you'll have spent $3,000. And if you weren't paying attention to your campaign and it wasn't converting, you're out $3,000. So here I'm going to put $100 a day because we're going to assume here that I have a budget of $3,000 for the next 30 days that I want to spend. And we're also going to assume that I'm going to be monitoring this on a daily basis. So if it's driving a ton of traffic but nothing's converting, I will pause it and come back to it. So $100 per day is going to be our budget for this example campaign. Ad extensions here. In our basic setup, we're not going to go over this. It's not absolutely essential that you set this up. This will be covered in our Ninja series, where we get into really advanced pay-per-click setup and strategies that help us increase our click-through rates and conversion rates. But for basic setup, we're going to scoot right past this. Here you can set up advanced settings. So I typically just have a start date of today, and I don't do any ad scheduling. I let it, whenever people want to find my products, I'll set it up for them to find my products. Where you would want to have ad scheduling set up is, let's say you were a service provider and you only did business between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. and you want to make sure that in all of your leads are phone calls, and you want to make sure that you're available to collect all of those phone calls. Some service providers will shut their ads off at 5 p.m. so they're not accruing clicks at a time where they're not available to take the call from whoever the lead or user may be. But in general e-commerce, you just run your ads 24 hours a day. So for here, we'll just leave that alone. Down here, ad delivery, ad rotation, dynamic search ads, campaign URL options, all of that stuff will come in our more advanced training series. For our purposes today, we're going to just get a basic campaign set up. So now that we're done here, we'll click Save and Continue. And here it's going to ask us to create our first ad group for this campaign, because a campaign cannot exist without an ad group. We're just going to go with a top-level general campaign with a keyword that describes the boots. So for this ad group, we're just going to call it Men's Vintage Boots. And we're going to create a text ad. Here you can see the different types of ads that are available. For here, we're going to do text ad. And here we're going to create our headline. And when you're writing ad copy, we'll go over more advanced ad copywriting in a later series. But for here, just some general rules. When you're writing ad copy, you want your ad copy, especially your headline, to be as closely related to the keyword that you're targeting as possible. So in this ad group, we're calling it Men's Vintage Boots. So you guys will learn that because the ad group is named Men's Vintage Boots, that will be the keyword that is in this ad group. And so I'm going to have the headline as Men's Vintage Boots, so that when the user types into Google, Men's Vintage Boots, my ad will be served and the headline will be an exact match to their search query. So they typed in Men's Vintage Boots, they're going to be served my ad that says Men's Vintage Boots. In the headline, here's where I typically use a descriptor so that they are aware of exactly what service I'm providing or exactly what the product is. So here we'll put brown vintage boots. So we've got authentic brown vintage boots. And I'm not going to qualify it as men's again here because we've already done that in the headline. And here's where I typically put a call to action. So if you're offering, 20% off, see Google has the same thing here, they'll say student save as an example. So let's say, you on your site, on the landing page, you have your price marked down 20% and you want to advertise that as a call to action. We'll put that here. So you can create a sense of urgency as well if you want. You can put save 20% today only. And here's where you have a display URL. And what this means is that doesn't necessarily need to be the actual URL that it's going to. For instance, if you have a big long URL that has dynamic variables in it, you don't want to put that as the display URL. You have a 35 character limit here. So typically what people do is they'll just put whatever their homepage URL is. So, if your homepage URL is www.example.com, that's what you'll put as your display URL, but that does not mean that's where the user will actually be sent. So here I'm going to put my domain name here it's on a WordPress site, so it's htashoes.wordpress.com. So that's what a user will see. And you can see this ad over here. Men's vintage boots, authentic brown vintage boots, save 20% today only. Down here, this is called your destination URL right here. And this is where you are actually going to send the user. The user will not see this exact URL in the ad copy. So here we put where we actually want to drive the user if they click on our ad. So my URL here is men's vintage boots. Now here's where we select our keywords. Keyword research and keyword selection is going to be a much more in-depth topic that we'll go over a little bit later in another video. But for today, I'm going to give you an example of a keyword that I would input for this ad group. So there are several different types of keyword matching that you can select to have your ad show up for. One is an exact match, and what that means is that your search query, your ad will only be displayed if the user searches for the exact phrase that in the exact order that you've selected, that you've opted in to have your ad run for. So the way that would look is you would put it in, your keyword would be men's vintage boots, and the user would have to search for this phrase exactly in this exact order with no additional keywords on the back or the front, and that's the only time your ad would run. When you're just getting set up, that may or may not be a good option for you if you're trying to keep your costs down and you just want to see how this converts for a small sample pool of users. Typically, I like to drive the most amount of targeted traffic that I can. So there is what's called broad match, and typically a broad match would look like this, and it's really loose. That means if any of these words, 3 words, are in the search query whatsoever, in any order, in any sentence, the user could type a paragraph into the search bar, but if these 3 words are in it, then they'll show up. So there's a modification to that called the broad match modifier. So I can put a plus here, a plus here, and a plus here, and that tells Google that I want to require that these 3 words be in the search phrase, the search query, and exactly, so not a variation of the word. I want to require that these 3 words are in the user's search query. So that's going to be the keyword that we're assigning to this ad group. So the keyword is men's vintage boots. And then my ad copy is men's vintage boots, authentic brown vintage boots, save 20% today. That's the ad that's going to display when a user searches for this query. My default bid, as I set up previously, is $3.50. And now I'm going to go ahead and save ad group. So now what you have is I have my first campaign right here, men's vintage boots, and I have an ad group. In that ad group, I have this keyword. And assigned to that keyword, I have this text ad. Here you can just double check. I'm opted into the search network only. My budget is $100 per day. I'm ensuring that I'm targeting the United States only. And I've got my first ad group running. One thing you'll want to be mindful of is, because at this point you'll have already entered your billing information. So that means that as soon as this ad is approved, your ad is going to start running unless you over here pause your campaign. And I always pause my campaign until I'm 100% certain that I'm ready to go live and that my landing page is ready to go and that I'm positioned to be able to take traffic and convert that traffic. And typically I'll wait until I have a full campaign built out. We're going to go over in the next video training building out additional ad groups and how you execute keyword research in order to build those ad groups out. But for now, let's pause our campaign, make sure we're not driving any traffic so that we can ensure that we're ready to absorb that traffic when it starts coming in. Okay, so that's it. We've set up our first campaign. In our next series, we're going to go over additional ad group creation. We're going to build this whole campaign out to 10 ad groups so that you can see how that process works, how you identify and select keywords. We'll go over using the Google keyword tool, and how you're going to build these ad groups out so that you have a robust and full campaign that's positioned to drive traffic from very targeted keywords to a good landing page that's going to convert users. Thank you so much. We'll see you next time.